Good afternoon, YouTube. It's John here from What's Spinning. I'm excited as hell today. We're chatting about this new Malibu Ken album. Malibu Ken is the newfound duo of legendary underground MC Aesop Rock and legendary weirdo producer Tobacco. Now, Aesop Rock for years has been one of my favorite MCs. As a matter of fact, his early 2000s masterpiece, Labor Days, was one of the first rap albums I ever listened to from start to finish and truly loved. I know just about every lyric on Float and Bazooka Tooth, even his later work like The Impossible Kid, which was a really fantastic album in 2016. But Tobacco's work I've always been a little iffy on. Now, don't get me wrong, I've been into some really oddball, out there, and freaky stuff over the years as far as music goes, but I've always been a little iffy on Tobacco's songwriting. As a matter of fact, the last Black Moth Super Rainbow album landed on my top 10 worst albums of the year list that year. I've always thought that his production was interesting and his sinister vocals are actually pretty ear-grabbing, but everything else about Tobacco's music has always sort of let me down. However, I feel like if Tobacco's working production and Aesop is working lyrics, this could be a really solid project. And just from listening to these singles, let me just say, where was this a couple of years ago when I was digging for good rap albums? This album starts off with a very woozy corn maze. And instantly, Aesop Rock in this very hectic, very synth-heavy, very droopy environment sounds right at home. And that's crazy for him, because usually over the years, whenever he's switched up a producer or taken on production by himself, it usually takes him a couple of tracks or maybe even a whole album to really sort of get in sync with him. See either the Hail Mary Marin project or his None Shall Pass album, which is iffy overall. But no, here he sounds like right on top of his game really fast too. There are some legitimately hilarious lines in here, and the pop culture references are right on point, but if you're an Aesop Rock fan, you could already expect that. You should have knew it was coming. And at the end of the day, this whole analogy of this corn maze as having walls up, it's so Aesop Rock. It's literally just so early 2000s Aesop Rock. It literally sounds like something he would have wrote on Float. And Tobacco's production right off the bat is just so eerie. And the effects he uses on Aesop's verse on the chorus, it's just, it's so chilling and great. Then we have Tuesday, which is a completely different animal altogether. Now, you need to realize going into this album, if you really pay attention to the lyrics, there are some genuinely hilarious stuff going on. And some of these anecdotes from Aesop are absolutely brilliant. There are some really funny bars on Tuesday. He goes deep into his neighbor finding mushrooms growing in his car or something along those lines and calling him while he's on tour to complain. And the funniest part about this is that he says that she sounds concerned by his lack of concern. And it gets even more funny later when he claims that he can't even take care of a plant when he's home and not on tour. Of course, he wraps all this up with the repeated line of, "It's just another Tuesday." That's so Aesop Rock. It's so him. And just how much of a hermit he comes off like here, hell yes. This is totally sounding like Float era Aesop to an extent. And not only that, it ends up being catchy in a horrible, twisted, distorted way. I love this track. Save Our Ship, on the other hand, it's very urgent, very upbeat. Aesop Rock sounds a whole lot more frantic right off the bat. And if I could take a second out here to talk about the beats on this album, it's not like this is the first time that Tobacco's done this before, but the very stripped down sort of 8-bit beats here on this album do add a certain campiness to it. It makes me feel like I'm watching some 80s horrible underground horror movie, but it's so bad that your parents can't even know that you're watching it. I love it though. And it's funny that I kind of get that 8-bit feel to it because Aesop brings in some old school arcade game references here just in time. Also here, as far as delivery goes, Ace is much more in your face and aggressive, and I do like that. However, if I had to choose one track of the bunch that I really wasn't as into, it would be this one. But still, this track, if this is the worst thing these two are putting together, it's really not that bad. The only reason that this one doesn't, absolutely get me going is I feel like there's, a couple of moments where Aesop is a little out of sync with the beat, but still, it's alright, it's not bad. On the other hand, Swordbox instantly comes off with such a presence. I mean, this track is a freak show of a tune, but it carries itself so massively. It's certainly hulking and all, but it's well presented. Now, if you're not into like the sort of 8-bit beats and Tobacco's production, I'm just gonna say it right now, this might not be an album for you because a lot of these same elements show up time and time and time again. But this sort of mangled soundtrack to a cult classic video game just is scratching so many itches for me right now. Now, on Swordbox, magic seems to be a big theme, but because Ace is just such a legendary weirdo, he comes off so much more evil and twisted, almost like this con artist that he's talking about here. The imagery is often very grisly and violent at times, but like I said, if you're an Aesop Rock fan, you know that this is coming. And just placed up against this very lo-fi 8-bit beat, it just drives home the fact that I feel like I'm watching some old school gory horror movie that's like super taboo. And it's funny because I feel like Tobacco really couldn't have done this project with just any old MC, but I think Ace has just the right amount of weirdness to make this project really hit home. Dog Ears, on the other hand, is much more sluggish, much less inviting overall. Here, Ace is absolutely at full blast, blistering with all these tongue-twisting verses like he is out of control here. And Tobacco, with his production here, just makes this one come off so murky, so twisted. And with all the heavily affected vocals on the chorus, this one just comes off once again genuinely evil. I love it. Now, this goes without saying. You probably know this already, but these aren't easy to digest tracks, especially with some of Aesop's legendary twisted lyrics that take years to digest. I would obviously recommend numerous listens with this one. But even just simple lines from Aesop like "turn down for your mom" just get me hyped so much and make me want to hear so much more from these two. But then we get Acid King. And for my money, like, I feel like this track sums up this entire album sound perfectly. And it is by far the best track here. It's upbeat, it's frantic, it's cold, it's out of control, it's wild, it's campy. Yes, it's a lot coming at you. And on top of that, between Aesop Rock's intense flow and this very suffocating production by Tobacco, this is a really tough track to take in all at once, but it's such a blast. And not to mention, with all of this 80s chic like revival going on right now, I could totally see this album becoming like a cult classic in the underground circles right now. And by the end of this track, Aesop's verse is genuinely terrifying. We're faced with extremely gory imagery, some of the worst on the album, as well as satanic references. This is, at the end of the day, just the absolute blast of a psychedelic rap album that I needed to hear right now. Suicide Big Gulp is one of the most colorful tracks here and brings in a well-needed dose of funk as well. Overall, I feel like Suicide Big Gulp is like the next level for these two. Like if the rest of the album was some campy horror movie, this is like the 3D version of it. And it's only made bigger when they bring in these sort of throwback lyrics that make me sound like I'm listening to some 80s snuff film. 1 + 1 = 13 isn't that bad, but it's around this time that I do come up with my only really slight criticism of this album, and that is a lot of the same themes do sort of show up a lot throughout this album. Not that that's really that bad of a thing, because Aesop and Tobacco have such chemistry together that they can repackage things really, really well. And that one line from Aesop, that "deliver us from nyuk nyuk and hardy har har." Wow. Like, it's moments like that that are just so freaking bizarre, but just, it's what I needed right now. But the duo really end up knocking it out of the park with this finale. First off, we get Churro, which is a pretty interesting change of place. So much of the imagery here just knocks it out of the park completely, even if a lot of it is fairly unpleasant. But I do, at the end of the day, enjoy the sunnier and lighter feel to this. It's nice to get a little bit of breath of fresh air, especially after all these twisted tracks in a row. Churro's definitely interesting, even if it's not nearly as suffocating. Plus, the absolutely weed-induced chorus here may be my favorite of the bunch. But Tobacco and Aesop end off this album on a really interesting note with Purple Moss. Now, this is something that I was not seeing coming, especially not after this absolute freak show of an album. This is a legitimately dreary, somber, emotional tune. This is coming from the two guys that just made weed and acid rap for the last 25 minutes, and it's pretty shocking. Also, might just be me, a Long Island guy, but hearing him drop names like Suffolk County and the Walt Whitman Mall does get me a little hyped. But beyond marking out about things like that, this is a really freaking fantastic tune. There are almost like trip-hop vibes in parts, and as far as Tobacco's vocals go, These are easily his most menacing and tortured and truly evil of the entire album, and that is saying something by far. And we get this bluesy guitar sample wailing throughout the background as well. I wasn't expecting for all these feels late in the album. And honestly, it's an amazing finale to this pretty awesome album. So yeah, this is an absolutely zany, out of control, psychedelic romp of an alternative rap album right now. But it's what I personally go wild for these days, and I haven't heard anything like this in quite some time. And yeah, some of the themes are a little one-dimensional, and it's pretty short. Like, they easily could have popped another 2 tracks on here. It's only like half an hour long, but still, this album is an absolute blast. This isn't the next Mad Villainy. This isn't the next Freddie Gibbs and Madlib. This isn't the next Run the Jewels. These are just 2 weirdos in alternative rap and psychedelic rock coming together and having a freaking blast. I'm feeling a strong 8 out of 10. If you like the review, make sure to subscribe and give us a like, and let me know down below what you guys thought of the album, and let me know what you guys want me to chat about in the future. And until next time, have a great day, guys.